Hi, my name's Seamo and I'm the inclusion lead with the Outdoors group, and I'd like to tell you a bit about the benefits of being out here in the woods, especially as this is for Autism Awareness Day, and there's lots to find out, as you'll discover. I want to share some hints and tips, but first a little bit about me. So I'm the inclusion lead, so I do a lot of different things, but one thing I really want to tell you about today is the forest school group that I run on a Monday here at Exmouth. Now, we try to be inclusive as we can, and part of that group there is a whole mix of different backgrounds, and I'm there to support children as they come out to forest school and really make the most of the benefits. So I want to tell you a bit more about that as children start to come back out into the woods and also outdoors. Now people are coming back to school, the schools are reopening, and maybe some people want to think about how they can really utilise that bit of garden or outdoor ground that they have. So a number of years ago, I myself started doing some research. I've worked within the field of autism for 20 years in a number of different settings, from special schools to an advisory team in Devon, and also playing with kids. Actually, I've worked with some children who are really challenging, but needed support when it came to play. So that's been my background, and I've always been interested in forest school and how it can really work for kids with autism. So a number of years ago, I read an article. It was a piece of research from Taiwan back in 2010, and that bit of research studied some of the benefits that people with autism had when they went outdoors. So there were several benefits, and this little short clip, I'm going to talk a bit about different benefits as we go along. But first, a little bit more about autism. So you might know that 1 in 100 people have autism. Actually, that number might be much higher than we think. That's because there are a number of people out there who might not have had a diagnosis, or they might not been recognised as being autistic. In fact, recently we've started rethinking in the profession with autism about actually different profiles that we might be missing. So these days we're more likely to think about 3 different profiles. So I'm going to share those with you. The first one is more of a classic autistic profile. Now, people with autism often struggle with communication and speech, and the person with classic autism really has a lot of communication and interaction and sensory difficulties, real challenges. And so I'm going to think a little bit about them as we talk today. I'm going to refer to them, though, in a quite unusual way as badgers. Now, as we know, badgers out here in the woods, we have plenty of badgers where they have badger tracks up the top there of the wood, and they tend to have quite repetitive behaviours. They like to follow the same track up and down as part of their routine. They like to be able to access a safe place. They're set when they feel in danger and be able to get back to it in a hurry if they need to. There might be wolves out there. Now, also badgers, sometimes they struggle, as you might have seen them moving around. They have an awkward gait, and people with classic autism struggle with something called proprioception, their body awareness, and they also struggle with balance, which we will talk about later. Then there's another profile, which is the high functioning, or in America we might even call them Asperger's. And there's plenty of children out there, some of them undiagnosed, maybe because they have found their specialist interest. So the high functioning children out there, I'm going to refer to them in this group not as badgers, but as crows. Now, crows have exceptional memories, really good eye for detail, and they're really good at problem solving as well. So we'll think about some of the positives of that profile out here in the woods as we go along. And then there is a third profile. Now, for many years, we have missed the diagnosis of girls. So we might have come across over the years girls who might present very high functioning and quite academic even, and we might recognize them in some way, but we know that girls are much better at masking some of their difficulties. And this has opened up a can of worms in the world of autism, that who is out there who is masking their difficulties. The autism is underneath, but some people are out there and they're better at hiding or conforming to meet people's expectations. And that might be around actually dealing with demands. So if you want to avoid a demand, sometimes compliance is a useful skill. Just saying yes to everything. You could be incredibly charming as well. Have a little bit of fleeting eye contact. But actually, they are always thinking about how they can control the situation. I'm going to talk about this group, who are often called pathological demand avoidant, as the wolves. They might even growl at you. We have them out here in the woods too. So, as we go along, there's going to be different sections. The first thing we need to start thinking about is communication. So, one of the difficulties, or shall we call it differences, with people with autism is communication. 40% of people with a diagnosis of autism have difficulties with delayed speech when they're young. Some actually really struggle to speak at all, and they might need an alternative way of communicating. So why would nature be good for that? Well, according to the Taiwan University, in their research, actually, as we probably know, communication outdoors is really, really rich in possibilities. Even just looking at an actual thing, really, really close up. Got a nice forget-me-not here. I can really see the hairs, tiny hairs on the leaves. Fascinating. Well, communication outdoors, they've discovered in Taiwan University, was much improved because there was so much things to talk about or comment about. I mean, aren't we always talking about the weather, for example? Out here, I can feel just a really gentle, slight breeze running through the woods today, but already I'm talking about it. Now, there are beautiful things out here to go and discover. Spring is on its way, and we all might be feeling that we need to go out and have a look for those signs. That is a good starting point for some really rich communication. Also, while we're outside, we might think about ways of making that communication a bit more concrete, a bit more simplistic, maybe a nice little visual to help out. Always really helps. So, I might, for instance, when someone comes for the first time to our forest school group, we'll do a nice health and safety check of the site. It might come up in communication that there is something that's really worrying them, and it's just a really simply grounding thing to do. For instance, one boy who came to our site on the first day was very worried about snakes, actually adder snakes. Well, we do get them. They are out there on the common, but they rarely come into the woods. It's too shady. It's too dark for them. But actually thinking about these things, real life situations, is much more powerful than thinking about concepts. We could sit indoors and talk about snakes all we like, but we're not having the real actual experience. I can hear a dog in the distance, for instance. We're more likely to comment and think about that while we're outdoors exploring. There's more possibilities even when we start to think about the sensory side of the world. Out here in the woods, we're constantly using our different senses. So actually it's not just communication rich, it is sensory rich. Natural spaces are really good, calm places to be. Indoors, if we went into a school building, especially if we went into, say, a preschool building or a reception class, the noise levels are extreme. Actually, a friend of mine did some research on it and discovered that most of them do not meet actual sound pollution standards. Well, being out here, on the other hand, we've got lots of really gentle sounds going on. I can hear some birds. As I said, there's a gentle breeze, but there are lots of sensory things that we can get involved with. We can sit by the fire. I've got a bit of clay here. We could be playing with some clay. Now, some children really like doing something. They might be very tactile. We might also get children who are quite avoidant, and this doesn't work for them. They might not want to touch anything. That's fine. The research in Taiwan University discovered that being outdoors over time desensitizes some of the issues that we might be worried about. So initially, they might not want to touch anything, but over time, it becomes slowly and gradually more likely that anxiety comes away and they might give it a go. There are also, there's plenty of research around the sense of smell. The sense of smell, or olfactory sensory system, really engages the oldest part of our brain, the amygdala. Sometimes people refer to it as the reptilian brain that puts us onto fight, flight, or freeze. Now, a simple thing of sitting by a fire and the smoke of that fire itself might be quite calming. Take, for instance, I've lit some joss sticks over here. Now, these joss sticks, this is rosemary joss sticks, and research has been done to prove that rosemary actually improves you being more alert and keeps you more awake and switched on. There are other things that we might start to think and recognize when we're outdoors that actually makes us feel calm. The smell of cinnamon, for instance, is quite a calming smell, a sweet calming smell. So there are many other things out here that are to do with the body as well, thinking about our body space and learning how to hold it. For someone on the autistic spectrum, that's a big deal. They need to learn where their body begins and where it ends. And they also need to learn about their balance. I'll talk a bit more about that later. But for now, I will just think about the next section, which is about being more alert. Okay, coming back to Taiwan University and their research, one of the things that they discovered was that cognition, or actually being more awake and alert and ready to learn, was much improved by people with autism when they were outdoors, and whether that was working in gardens or playing. Now, actually, when we're out here, it's so much more calm, and there's so many ways of refocusing ourselves, refocusing our energies, and one of those things is starting to think about play and exploring the woods. So actually, when we think about that, one of the simplest things is actually playing by doing. Now, when someone comes to the woods, actually we don't need too much language. I'm using plenty of it now, but actually when we're out in the woods here, we can reduce our language right down and just think about physical play. And that's creating physical opportunities out in the woods. And there's so many abundant ways that we can think about this. So it could be when children come to the woods, we get them to line up on a rope. At one end, we have a tortoise representing feeling too slow. And at the other end, we have a hare representing too fast. And in the middle is just right. That's where we want to get to when we're at that fully alert, engaged, and calm and happy place. So when children arrive at the woods, they race up, deciding which way they're going to go. And for the children who are just right, that's fine. They can choose what to do. For the children who are feeling too fast, maybe that at the moment they might be feeling excited and actually a mix of anxiety about the new. Coming back to the woods after COVID, as people generally are starting to do now, even though there are all these fabulous benefits, we know that they're going to be worried about something. And it could be the tiniest thing in the world. So if they're feeling too fast, actually giving them an activity to direct them into is going to be really helpful if they've got the extra energy. If they're too slow and sluggish and they can't get started, actually finding something maybe a bit more gentle to get them started, maybe some time around the fire, maybe time with an adult who needs to listen to them as well, or even going out and finding a calm, quiet space or in a hammock. But those too fast, they just need to go. And they run off and they go and find cargo nets or climb trees, and they exert their energy. Because children don't need to be fully directed. And this is the wonderful thing about Forest School for children with autism. 3, play. Now, a lot of people don't understand this concept. They think this is really difficult for someone with autism who needs lots and lots of direction. But being outside, they are moving their body, it's helping their body coordination. Just even walking along an uneven path out here in the woods is doing lots and lots of benefit for them. Whether they decide to climb to the top of the tree because they're super confident, or even if they just climb up just to that first branch which is just within reach, that is still a massive achievement for them, and it improves their body coordination. So that body coordination is really important because, as I said before, poor balance and poor body spatial awareness are 2 key things for children with autism, and they don't get those indoors most of the time when they have to sit and listen and focus. So there's lots and lots of ways that we're doing them enormous benefit by being out here and learning that not only can they play physically, but also start to understand their emotions and how they're feeling about things, and giving them plenty and plenty of time for that to happen. So what we find is that play overall is much improved. Children with autism, if I come back to start thinking about it, those badgers might just want to do some digging, and that's fine. You just give them a place to dig, or they might have spend time in a hammock or in a shelter where they just cut out too much light and they need low stimulus, calm places to be. Equally, then we have the crows, the high functioning Asperger's, who really they're curious about things, they're curious about how things work. Who knows, in the end they might have a shed of tools and become experts at making things and working with their hands. And we need to encourage that space to happen. And then we have the wolves. The wolves need lots of space to run around. They can be very difficult, as I know, fitting into a box, fitting into a school system, when for them they might have one exceptional skill, and that might be an outdoor skill. They might be perfectly happy just working with tools, and that's going to be the thing that's going to empower them and make them feel confident for life. And that's fabulous. If they can find it out here, where we're taking away all the stresses, all the pressure from them, then that's going to set them up for life. So some people with autism find that the outdoors becomes their specialist interest. We might have heard about people who are computer geeks or love working for computer companies like Microsoft and YouTube. They actively now seek people who have high functioning autism to recruit them for their skills. They have incredible skills. They can be incredibly loyal. They have, as I've said before, a really good eye for detail. And actually, there are plenty of people out there who are working outdoors. And some of them, only a few, are really, really well known. Of course, we have Chris Packham and Greta Thunberg, and there are plenty of other examples as well. I highly recommend reading a recent book by Dara McNulty called Diary of a Naturalist. That's a fantastic book, and he describes his experiences of being outdoors and the way that it really keeps him calm and away from the bustle of the streets of the city, where there can be too much going on. We need the outdoors now. So I'm not just talking about autism now, and we need people who are advocates for it as well. So have a rethink. Think about really what are those benefits that I've talked about, because many of them are really beneficial to us as well. And for one just tiny thing, with Taiwan University, self-stimulating behaviours, things that sometimes children with autism find themselves very isolated because they do these awkward movements. Maybe when they're feeling fizzy or overexcited or even stressed, actually they reduce when they're outside. And in that environment, we can all be just children and adults playing and being out here. That's the last thing I want to say. Thank you for tuning in. Bye.